Okay, all right, let's bring in Mr. Button. This morning, Craig, the Edmonton Oilers out-kinging the Los Angeles Kings last night with a 1-0 victory. What's that say about this team right now?
Well, it was a game where you have to recognize what type of game you're in, and if you want to compete for the Stanley Cup, you got to be successful and find a way to be comfortable in those types of games, as hard as they are. And the Edmonton Oilers were. It was a terrific effort by the Edmonton Oilers. And you think about the Kings. So they went into Winnipeg, they gave up 1 goal. They went into Calgary, they gave up 2 goals, and they come to Edmonton and they give up 1 goal. So you give up 4 goals, you think, okay, you're 3-0 right on the road. They go home with 1 win in overtime and 2 losses. But listen, when I watched that game last night, what I see is the Edmonton Oilers team that says, okay, this is what it takes. I don't know why, but I go back. You two guys are too young. But I go back to 1984, and I think about that 1-0 victory in Long Island in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. And yeah, they got blown out in the next game by the Islanders, but then they won the next 3 en route to their first Stanley Cup. The Edmonton Oilers proved something to themselves that night in 1984. I think last night, this team proved themselves that, hey, we can play this style of game and be successful.
Well, and I think you make a good point when you said they looked comfortable in that game, right? Like teams can win games 1-0, and sometimes it doesn't look, but they looked like they're okay winning a game that way, and that's the emphasis you're trying to make here, right? Like they look like a team that can win a 1-0 game if required, which is huge.
Yeah, and I mean, whether you win or not, I mean, obviously you want to win, but that was a hard game, and they made it really hard on the LA Kings. And when you think about it, and you think about how the LA Kings want to play, they suffocate you. It's playoff hockey. I mean, to me, that was a playoff hockey game, and the Oilers were really, really strong in that. And to your point, comfortable. And you have to be comfortable in those games. And it's 0-0, it's 0-0. And then all of a sudden, off of a play, who else but Connor McDavid to nail it? I mean, to think about, like, what he does and how he does it, Draisaitl part of the whole thing, too. I mean, again, they're game breakers. And sometimes you just need one game break. And in those types of games, one game break can put you on the right side of things. But everybody played. That was a strong game. That was a really strong game by the Edmonton Oilers.
Craig, we know, I think people can compile a short shopping list of what the Oilers might go out and look to add or before the trade deadline. When it comes to knowing thine enemy, though, in the LA Kings, I mean, it just seems destiny. They play 2 more times in April. You're maybe assuming an opening round series, today. Obviously, things can change. But what would you say if you were operating the Kings right now? Where would they need to go out and address in order to reach kind of that next level?
I'm going to go back to 2012 and 2014. Years that the LA Kings both won the Stanley Cup. In 2012, they went and acquired Jeff Carter. They needed a little bit more goal scoring. They needed a little more pop. In 2014, they went and acquired Marian Gaborik. They needed a little bit more scoring. They needed a little more pop. I don't think it's changed in 2025. I think that they can benefit from a little more pop. I mean, you don't get anything easy against the LA Kings, and you can work hard and work hard and work hard. I just mentioned they gave up 4 goals in 3 games on the road against, 2 really top quality teams and the Calgary Flames, who are playing well. And you get 1 win out of 3 games. It screams they need a little bit more offensive pop. So, and they're going to get Drew Doughty back, so they don't need any help on the blue line. They don't need any help with their defensive play. They do need some help with their offensive play.
Just sticking with the Kings here for a second, because like Eric mentioned, they're going to be a very familiar foe, I think, again, for the Oilers. Who or what is driving that success this year for this group, Craig?
Yeah, it's such a great question. It's hard not to say the Kopitar, because the identity of the team, right? He's won 2 cups. he knows how they want to play. They played like that for Todd McClellan before they really fell off a cliff and Jim Hiller took over. But you watch how they play, and it feels very similar. The stylistically or system wise, they might be a little bit different under Jim, but how they play without the puck and how they don't give you anything. I mean, I use the term shrink the ice. They shrink the ice as good as anybody, and I don't know. I think that ingrained in the organization is a style of play that says if we want to have success, this is what we're going to have to do. But when your top player, your captain, embraces it and says this is the way we're going to do it, hard not to follow along. And they have that right in place with Kopitar. And let me just add this too: when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl play the way they did last night, it's hard not, like you have to follow. Like they weren't trying to play a different game. They said this is the game we have to play, and they showed the way.
What you bring up Leon Draisaitl there? What does it say about Leon Draisaitl that he's on a team with Connor McDavid, but he's been undoubtedly their most valuable player so far this season? Like to just say that's possible for anybody to have that title when you're on a team with Connor McDavid seems unbelievable.
It does. Like if you said, okay, like you have that scenario, but the most valuable player is Draisaitl. It's eye raise. It raises your eyebrows. Oh, really? But and the luxury that the Edmonton Oilers have is they have two of the very best players on the planet. Two of the very best. And Leon Draisaitl, and it's interesting. And Dustin, you and me were up in Camrose for the World Junior A Challenge, and you watch Frondell, and I think he's got a game that's similar to Barkov. But I was looking through some notes yesterday, and I looked back at some notes I had on Leon Draisaitl in his draft year, and I had some of the same similar things written about Frondell that I had about Draisaitl. I think Draisaitl, when you think about projection, he was the third overall pick. But you think about projecting that he could be this type of player. I mean, it's not even close in that draft who the best player is. And I think it speaks volumes about how much he improved, how much he worked at becoming the player that he is today. Because there's nights you watch Leon Draisaitl and he looks unstoppable. No, I shouldn't say nights. Most nights he looks unstoppable. He's that good. He's that big. He's that powerful. What I love about it, him and Connor McDavid play two different styles of game, but I believe that they play the style of game that suits each of their skill sets to perfection.
TSN's Craig Button with us on the Nielson Show, EdmontonSportsTalk.com. We had a text, Craig, fly in from Andrew. The Kings need a goal scorer. Perhaps they'll be interested in a team's fifth leading goal scorer. He's referring to one Jeff Skinner, who continues to find himself firmly entrenched in the doghouse. Jokes aside, though, what happens there with Skinner? What do you see happening? What can happen, I guess, given the fact that
he's got a full no movement clause, but if you're going to keep scratching him, I have to feel he'd think he'd be open to a deal.
Yeah.
But what do you do here?
What do you do here? I think that I agree with you, Dustin. I think that you'd be open to a deal. Listen, the LA Kings are not interested in Jeff Skinner.
No.
The challenge for the Edmonton Oilers, the challenge for the Edmonton Oilers is where's a place where where Jeff Skinner could find some playing time and get to a spot. But I think the die is cast. I don't think that Jeff Skinner is going to fit in the Edmonton Oilers plans, and we know that Evander Kane eventually is gonna get back in the lineup. I guess what I would say is if I'm talking to Jeff Skinner, listen, there's two options here for you while you're here. Try to work to find your way back in the lineup and be productive, and we'll work to move you. It would be a two-pronged approach with Jeff Skinner if I was approaching it as a GM.
Last one for you, Craig, and this goes back to Connor McDavid, 28th birthday yesterday. You mentioned you were looking back at your Leon Draisaitl notes. I'm sure your McDavid notes just said, wow, in his draft year. But has he been even better? Like there were a lot of expectations on Connor McDavid leading up to the draft. Has he been even better than you thought he was going to be, or is this what you expected from this kid?
I think geez, everybody had high expectations. I mean, when you first watched them, it was wow. You nailed it. It was really simply because you hear so much about young players. And then when you go and watch them, more times than not, I think probably, you see a good young players. You go, yeah, they're good. But with McDavid, the hype was fully warranted. For him to do what he's done to this point in his career, I don't think unexpected would be the right word, but I think that he's exceeded those high expectations. Now, maybe not by a lot. But I think Leon Draisaitl has exceeded expectation by a considerable amount. He's a good player. I mean, the guy's one of the best. He's a superstar. He's an impact superstar. But I think McDavid by a little bit, just because what he's done in his short career, 10 years in, is pretty bloody impressive. And I would say, yeah, by a marginal, by the margins of exceeding it, yes. And one thing I wanted to say real quickly, you know who could use that truck if you want to buy a truck? Yeah. Sam Darnold. He couldn't find a way to get away from the pass rush of the LA Rams. Phone Sam Darnold and say, Sam, you need a truck.
How tough is it to probably cost yourself $40 to $50 million over the last 2 weeks if you're Sam Darnold, man?
Oh, think about it though. And listening to Troy Aikman last night on the broadcast, I was laughing because he's going, and Troy was being kind, but at the same time, the practicality of it is like, it's near wow, this could be his last snap as a Viking. Could be, will be. Yeah, I don't want to think about costing myself 40 or 50 million, but bottom line is that we just talked about Connor McDavid. That next contract, there will be no question the highest paid player in the league is going to be.
There'd be a lot of money coming down the pipe there for Connor McDavid for sure. Craig, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
There you go. That's Craig Button. We could just sit there for an hour and chat with stuff about Craig.